You know that moment when you're in a meeting, a conversation, a relationship, and you suddenly realize you could just not be there. That if you left, no one would notice. That someone else could occupy the exact same space and fulfill the exact same role. And suddenly, that's you, the generic one, the replaceable one, the one whose absence isn't felt. But you aren't that. Psychology has studied what makes a person genuinely irreplaceable, and what it found says much more about the people who taught you that being necessary is the same as being valuable than about who you really are. You, the one who stops everything when someone speaks from the heart, who feels the tension in a room before a single word is uttered, who notices what others miss. This profile has a different name. And here's what no one tells you about it. What you call being easy to ignore is, more often than not, the sign of someone operating on a frequency that most people haven't learned how to tune into yet. This video was made for you. If you've ever felt like you're easy to ignore, that people move on without missing you, or that the bonds you build don't seem to last, stay with me and pay attention, because there's something most videos on this topic don't tell you. There's a version of this profile that goes completely wrong. A version that looks like irreplaceability on the outside, but is a psychological trap on the inside. I won't reveal what it is just yet, but when we get there, you'll recognize it immediately. Psychologists and neuroscientists have identified 3 psychological mechanisms that define the profile of the genuinely irreplaceable person. Not the loudest, not the most popular, the irreplaceable one. The one whose absence changes the room in ways no one can put into words, but everyone can feel. The first mechanism is deep presence. The second is selective access. And the third is emotional co-regulation. But before we dive into each one, there's something that completely changes the weight of this. It's 2026. As artificial intelligence levels productivity, automates technical output, and homogenizes results, the only asset that remains truly scarce is human psychological depth. Genuine connection, real presence, emotional regulation. What a machine cannot simulate is what you at this exact moment in history can offer. It's the rarest resource there is. Let's start with the first one. Deep presence. Let me paint a picture for you. You're in a conversation with 2 different people on different days. The first one listens to you talk, but while you're speaking, you can see in their eyes that they're already formulating their next response. They're physically present, but they're somewhere else psychologically. The second person does something different. They are there, truly, not waiting for their turn to speak, not formulating a rebuttal, just with you. You remember this second person for years. The first one, you might not even remember their name. Can you remember the last time someone truly offered you that? This is what neuropsychiatrist Daniel Siegel researched when he developed the concept of interpersonal presence, the ability to be completely available emotionally and attentively to another person. In simple terms, being in the room and being genuinely accessible are 2 radically different things, and most people spend their entire lives only doing the first one. Here's the science behind it. When someone offers us full presence, when we perceive on a neurological level that we are the real focus of another person's attention, the brain registers this as a unique experience. It's not charm, it's not a performance. It's a regulated nervous system creating space for another nervous system. And people come back to that repeatedly, often without knowing why. Siegel's distinction is straightforward. There's a difference between being in a conversation and being the conversation. Most people occupy space. The irreplaceable person occupies attention, not because they force it, but because they are genuinely present. When was the last time you gave that to someone? And that brings us to the second mechanism. But here's the thing. Have you ever tried to be available to everyone and felt like, instead of becoming more important to people, you became more invisible? That is exactly what psychology says should happen. Think of someone you know who never seems to be completely available, not because they're cold, but because you feel like their time means something. That when they say yes, it's because they truly wanted to. Now think of someone who always says yes, who is available for everything, for everyone, all the time. Which of the 2 would you value more deeply? Robert Cialdini, psychologist and author of Influence, documented the scarcity principle decades ago. What is rare is perceived as more valuable. And this doesn't just apply to objects. It applies in a direct and measurable way to human presence. When you have clear standards about how your time is spent, who you invest genuine energy with, where you place your attention, you aren't being difficult. You are creating value through real selectivity, and the people around you notice that, even if they can't name what they're feeling. But here's where it gets complicated. There's a huge difference between selectivity born from self-knowledge and selectivity born from the fear of being rejected. One is a gate. The other is a wall. Gates block selectively. Walls block everyone. Self-determination theory by Edward Desai and Richard Ryan identified three core psychological needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And when it comes to being irreplaceable, autonomy is the key. People are drawn to those who model autonomy in a solid and calm way, not to those who bend to every request out of fear of displeasing others. Why? Because when you say yes, everyone wants to know it's because you truly wanted to. Your ability to say no isn't rejection. It's the psychology of genuine value. And here's the irony most people miss. The more you try to be available to everyone, the less irreplaceable you become to anyone. The person everyone can access at any time is precisely the person no one values deeply. Two mechanisms define. But the third is what transforms the first two from individual traits into something that changes entire environments. Stay with me. Neuroscientist Stephen Porges developed polyvagal theory, a map of how the human nervous system reads signals of social safety in others. Think of it like this. You walk into a difficult meeting. Everyone is carrying the weight of the day. But there's one person in the room. And when they speak, something changes. The temperature drops. You feel clearer. You can't quite name why. There is a mechanism for this. When you are near someone who is emotionally regulated, your own nervous system begins to co-regulate. You become calmer, safer, without that person doing anything deliberately. Daniel Goleman called this operational capacity emotional intelligence, and he demonstrated that it's not a fixed personality trait. It's a learnable skill. But in 2026, with collective burnout on the rise and automation increasingly replacing technical functions, this specific skill has stopped being a differentiator and has become the differentiator. Artificial intelligence can analyze patterns, generate content, and solve logical problems with absurd speed. What it cannot do is walk into a room full of tension and change the emotional temperature of the environment. It cannot make another person's nervous system feel safe. Most people add turbulence to already turbulent situations. They arrive with their own agitation, their own fears, their own urgent need for validation, and the environment absorbs all of it. The irreplaceable person does the opposite. They enter a space, and something changes. Not because they are performing calmness, but because they are genuinely regulated inside. And other people's nervous systems register that before a single word is even spoken. This isn't mysticism. It's documented neurobiology. Do you know someone like that? Someone who, when they walk into a room, the atmosphere shifts. And here is the most important question. Can you be that person? Everything I've said so far is true, but it's not the whole truth, because there is another type of irreplaceable person, and this version is a trap. There are two paths to creating psychological irreplaceability. The first is born from depth, genuine presence, clear boundaries, and emotional co-regulation. The second is born from fear, control, created dependency, and subtle emotional manipulation. The difference between the two isn't in the apparent result. It's in what the people around them feel. Irreplaceability based on depth creates freedom. The people around that person feel more whole, more confident, more capable. They come back because they want to, not because they have to. Irreplaceability based on dependency creates obligation. People stay, but out of a sense of heaviness, not by choice. And over time, what felt like connection starts to feel like a debt they can never pay off. Here's the honest diagnosis. The healthy version feels like relief to those nearby. The unhealthy version feels like a burden no one can let go of. Depth attracts. Dependency binds. Gates create choice. Walls create a prison. Can you differentiate between the two in your own life? In your closest relationships, at work, at home, in friendships, does your presence create freedom or obligation? This isn't a rhetorical question. It's the most important diagnosis of this video. So here's the final question. When you imagine someone simply not needing you, not calling you, not looking for you, moving on just fine without your presence, what do you feel? If the answer is relief, great, they're doing well, then you are operating from genuine depth. If the answer is threat, a tightening, an urgency, an immediate need to make yourself necessary again, that is the fear of dependency talking. No judgment. It's just information. And here's what needs to be clear. You aren't trying to become irreplaceable from scratch. You are returning to a psychological depth that was always yours, one that no algorithm, no automated system, no flattened version of human productivity can replicate. In 2026, this isn't self-help. It's the scarcest asset in existence. You are not replaceable. You are operating on a different frequency than most. There are many people like you, with this depth, this capacity, who have never seen it named this way. You are not alone in this. Tell me in the comments which of the 3 traits you recognize most in yourself: deep presence, selective access, or emotional co-regulation. I read every comment. And if you want to keep understanding the psychology of what truly makes you unique, subscribe to the channel. The next video might explain even more about you.